What's up, guys? I'm HammerBro101 here, and today, I'm going to rank the Eeveelutions by their strength. Before I start this ranking, I would like to clarify that each Eeveelution is as strong as each other in terms of stats, although I will use them as part of determining their overall strength. What I will be considering is their usability, both in competitive and in regular gameplay. I will also take their abilities and movesets into consideration. This means that while your favorite Eeveelution may not place very high, it doesn't mean I dislike it. With all that said, let's get started. Starting us off, we have the weakest of the bunch. Now, I know a lot of you may immediately go for Flareon as being the weakest Eeveelution, but I personally don't believe that to be the case. I believe Glaceon is the weakest Eeveelution. To start, let's explain what's wrong with the Ice type in general. As you all know, the Ice type is one of the worst types in the franchise. I will look at its battle properties to see what's wrong with this type. The biggest problem with the Ice type is its defensive coverage. It only resists itself, and is weak to fighting, rock, steel, and fire, the latter two of which are two of the best types in the game. To add on to that, steel, fire, water, and ice all resist attacks from it, making it annoying to get some decent damage on some of the more frequently used Pokémon. Sure, it's super effective against flying, ground, grass, and dragon types, which are all nice types to be super effective against, but what good does that do when you have abysmal speed, and these Pokémon often have access to moves that will obliterate any ice type in their path? Don't get me wrong, 130 special attack is nothing to sneeze at, and she actually has pretty solid defensive stats for an ice type, but with bad HP and speed, the writing was already on the wall for Glaceon. As of Sword and Shield, she has no access to hidden power, so the only viable coverage move she has is Shadow Ball. Even if Glaceon got hidden power back, she would still find herself at the bottom of the list. Moving on to the second weakest Eeveelution is the one you were all expecting to be in Glaceon's place, Flareon. Flareon may not be as bad as Glaceon, but he's still not very good either. Like Glaceon, Flareon suffers from having pretty bad HP and speed, but his main problem comes from his lack of decent fire-type attacks. He has a phenomenal 130 base attack stat, but the only real decent physical moves he has are Flare Blitz, which has recoil, Super Power, which lowers attack and defense, and Iron Tail, which has a pretty bad 75% accuracy. Now, he does have a decent 95 special attack, so you could trap moves like Lava Plume, Shadow Ball, or Mystical Fire, but it's not really worth it to make it a mixed attacker. Again, that 65 speed is going to hold him back in the long run, and I think swapping the special attack and speed stats could have made him a little more viable, as he does have some decent coverage. Having access to Flash Fire in Guts isn't the worst thing either, but none of that is going to make Flareon worth choosing over some other Fire-type Pokémon at the end of the day. This next Eeveelution is the last one to talk about who isn't particularly great, being Leafeon. Leafeon is a step in the right direction in terms of stat distribution and coverage moves. She has 110 attack and 95 speed, which is great, with the weird decision to give her 130 defense. I think Leafeon could have been slightly higher tiered if you were to make the attack 130, the speed 110, and the defense 95. That extra 15 in speed and 20 in attack really could have made her a pretty formidable opponent. Let's talk about the other positives Leafeon has. She has access to amazing grass-type moves like Leaf Blade, Solar Blade, and Seed Bomb, and decent coverage options like Iron Tail and X-Scissor. One thing that's holding Leafeon back for the time being is her loss of knockoff. Sure, if you're just using it for only Dark-type coverage, Bite is a decent replacement, but the reality is, knockoff is so much more useful than being a Dark-type coverage move. I don't know if Leafeon will get knockoff back, but just like hidden power on Glaceon, it only makes a slight difference. To finish off the lower half of this list, we're moving into the actually decent competitive Eeveelutions, starting with Jolteon. I wish Jolteon could be a lot higher on this list. I mean, just look at how cool he is. I'd even go as far to say Jolteon is the most popular of the original three Eeveelutions. He just looks powerful, and to be quite honest, he is. I mean, look at these stats. He has 110 special attack, 95 special defense, and 130 speed. Even if you include forms like Speed Deoxys or Mega Alakazam, Jolteon still has one of the highest base speed stats in the game, which is pretty crazy to think about. So that means Jolteon must be really, really good, right? Well, kind of. He definitely can do decently well, but his lack of coverage makes him less viable compared to some other Pokémon. See, Jolteon's main purpose was to hit really hard with his electric-type attacks, and then Volt switch out if a major threat came by, but this kind of role was easily taken over by much better Pokémon over the years like Rotom and Tapu Koko. Since he loses a lot of his good coverage moves like Hidden Power and Signal Beam, while only having access to moves like Shadow Ball and Pin Missile, Jolteon is a lot harder of a sell to use on a team. At this point in time, the only reason someone would use Jolteon on their team is because he's their favorite Pokémon. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying that there are better options out there. Starting the upper half of this list is a major fall from grace that some of you may have seen coming, but I imagine a lot of you will be caught off guard by. It pains me to say this, but the next Eeveelution on this list is Umbreon. Don't get me wrong, Umbreon is still incredibly good, all things considered, but he has fallen off big time ever since Sword and Shield came out. For a long period of time, Umbreon was considered one of the best Eeveelutions ever. Look at these stats. That's one thick boy right there. 95 horsepower, 110 defense, and 130 special defense. This dude was such an indomitable wall that people would rage quit as soon as they saw him. Umbreon was that feared in the competitive scene, so what changed? Well, with the release of Sword and Shield, Umbreon lost Toxic and Heal Bell. Wish, Heal Bell, Toxic, and Protective Leftovers was a set to be feared. Stall with those bulky stats and healing capabilities while you eat away at their HP with Toxic. Take that away, and you're just a decently bulky wall. Of course, it's not a bad thing. Umbreon isn't that bad by any means, but it's so sad to see this once great Pokémon reduced to something you can easily no longer consider. I hope Umbreon can get Toxic back one day. Some of you may disagree with this placement, but above Umbreon, and in the third place spot, is the last of the OG Eeveelutions, Vaporeon. Like Umbreon, Vaporeon has a bit of bulk on him, having 95 special defense, and that large 130 horsepower. Thus far, Umbreon was the only other Eeveelution to have a 65 horsepower stat, but Vaporeon takes the whole cake with that one, with it being the highest it can be. He also has that solid 110 special attack, which helps out a lot more than some of the others on this list. Toxic and Heal Bell are taken away from Vaporeon as well, so what exactly makes him slightly better than Umbreon? Simply put, he has a better move pool. While missing some crucial moves, he still maintains, having moves like Shadow Ball, Surf, Muddy Water, and most importantly, Scald and Ice Beam. Ice Beam and Water-type Pokémon go together like coffee and cream. You get the benefits of an Ice-type move without the drawbacks of being an Ice-type Pokémon. For Scald, you get a solid 80 base power with the additional bonus of having a 30% chance to burn your opponent. Vaporeon still isn't the cream of the crop, but he adds a little bit of capabilities that Umbreon sadly can't offer anymore. Again, it was hard to pick between the two of them, so I'm not completely confident in my decision. It can really go either way, but please let me know who wins between Umbreon and Vaporeon. Just shy of the number 1 spot, we have Umbreon's daytime counterpart, Espeon. Originally, Umbreon was going to have this penultimate spot, but I don't need to continue going on about why that is. You all get it by now. So why does Espeon deserve it? First, we're going to start off at her stats. Similar to Jolteon, Espeon has a focus on her special stats and her speed with a bit of rearrangement. She has 110 speed, 95 special defense, and 130 special attack. That's not too surprising considering how high the Psychic-type special attack stat is on average, and being that Psychic is a very strong type in general, that bodes very well for this Eeveelution. Next are her moves, And in my opinion, Espion has one of the best move pools of any evolution. She has access to Shadow Ball, which is nice on a Psychic type, but she can also dish out Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Grass Knot, which can come in handy in specific situations, but she really shines with her ability choices. First is Synchronize, which will pass burn, paralysis, or poison to an opponent that gave you the status condition. This will discourage a lot of stallers from messing with you if you have Espion out. She also has Magic Bounce, which will reflect any stat-changing moves thrown at her, along with being able to throw back stealth rocks and spikes, which is so incredibly useful. When you combine all of these factors together, you get yourself a great Pokemon, but her consistent goodness comes from her versatility. Want a calm mind and hit for a large amount of damage with Stab? Go ahead. Want to go choice specs with coverage? No problem. Want to use the infamous Baton Pass and store a power combo? Espion's the one. There are so many choices with Espion. She was going to be in the top 3 without a doubt, but as all of you know, there's one more Eeveelution who I believe is the best of them all. Kind of easy to figure out. Sylveon was in the top. I mean, she was pretty much the last one left. Of all the types that probably needs to be nerfed, Fairy has to be on top of the list at this point. This type came into the series in X and Y, and has shaken up the game a lot since then. With the Pokemon it can do well against, the Fairy type was set for success right away, and Sylveon wasn't an exception to that. She has her good 3 stats spread out with 95 horsepower producing bulk, 110 special attack so she can hit hard, and 130 special defense. I'm not the biggest fan of the spread, but it works, so I can't say much. She has a pretty low 60 speed, which would normally be a detriment to Pokemon like this. However, she has a nice trick up her sleeve, being Pixelate. This is the ability to turn any normal type move into a Fairy type move. It's absolutely beautiful. I wish all Eeveelutions had an ability like this for their respective types, but I digress. Like Umbreon and Vaporeon, she can take on a decent Cleric type role, but the Pixelate ability really changes the game by giving her a 90 base power stab hyper voice with no repercussions whatsoever. It's great. Having coverage options with Mystical Fire, Magical Leaf, Psyshock, and Shadow Ball really gives her a solid boost in versatility. Sylveon may be the newest Eeveelution, but she is by no means a slouch, and she's clearly shown right off the bat that she is the superior Eeveelution when it comes to strength. Well, that wraps up my Eeveelution ranking video. Honestly, it was really hard to rank these the way I did, because all of them have their own benefits, but at the end of the day, some will be better than others. It's unavoidable. What did you think about these rankings? Do you agree with me, or do you believe I overlooked something about one of them? Let me know in the comments below, as I'm really curious on how all of you view the Eeveelutions. This is HammerBro101, signing off.